300 drag queens and allies storm DeSantis-controlled Florida State Capitol for the Queen's March. Today, history is made in America as more than 300 drag queens and allies stormed Florida's state capitol to protest the actions of Governor and presidential candidate Ron DeSantis's imminent signing of one of the most anti-LGBTQ+ and anti-drag bills in America. The large crowd rode buses from many cities from across the state to Tallahassee and met at Cascades Park. In polished pumps, a sea of red t-shirts that read, "The show must go on," the Queens marched more than half a mile to the Capitol building, carrying clever and poignant signs on the state of our state. Upon arrival in the Capitol rotunda, you heard an impromptu chant that is likely going to be heard across the USA. In addition to "Drag is not a crime" chant, in the Capitol Rotunda, the 300 drag queens and allies chanted, "Hey, hey, ho, ho, DeSantis has got to go." This march, which organizers believe to be the largest demonstration by drag performers in Florida history, comes a week after state lawmakers voted to advance bills that would criminalize transgender people's use of the bathroom that aligns with their identity and ban doctors from providing gender-affirming care. Critics of this Florida legislative session argue that this may be the worst in Florida history for the LGBTQ+ community. Lawmakers passed bills that would allow healthcare providers to refuse people care based on religious beliefs and ban the use of personal pronouns not aligned with gender at birth in Florida schools. One bill appears specifically to target drag performers, barring children from attending adult live performances featuring certain commonly used prosthetics. The bill's language has sparked questions about the future of pride. Angelique Young, a Tampa Bay drag performer, was one of today's organizers. She said, quote, "What started as wanting to speak on behalf of entertainers quickly became a fight for everyone in the LGBTQ community," end quote. Many of the Queen's March said that they had no ability to change DeSantis's supermajority, so there was no chance of changing minds today. But one drag performer perhaps said it best at looking at today's sights at the Capitol by saying, quote, "Isn't this how the 1969 Stonewall Riots began? Overwhelming odds against us. Add drag queens, add trans people, add queer people, then a fight for what was right and what was for wrong," end quote. Queer News Tonight would like to thank Fort Lauderdale's Lips Restaurant and drag queen Amanda Austin for her assistance in today's historic news. I tell you, all of my friends say, "Al, you're reporting at Queer News Tonight. It's so dark." And I always say to them, well, please change the news and we'll talk about some fun things. But the news is dark.
Yeah.
I have to say, for the first time in weeks, when I heard this news and I watched that video, it's the first time in weeks related to the news ends of, not the silliness, we love the silliness too, but in terms of the news ends of LGBT in Florida, I smiled and I did a little internal cheer. And now I voice up my support and cheer of what all of these magnificent drag queens did, and trans people did for us today in the Capitol Rotunda.
We keep talking about that on the show. When are we going to start marching?
Yeah.
It was a big first step.
Yeah.
Big first step.
Yeah.
I love so much about this story because it's exactly what you noted. It's hope, right? I mean, we're seeing, and we need way more of
Now
this.
we need 3,000.
We need 3,000 and 300,000 and the whole state. I mean, like that is like and a movement for the, because I mean, this is not going to stop in Florida. It's not going to stop, right? There's a lot happening here. And I really appreciate that quote about how Stonewall, right, started. That is like to think about liberation, but liberation for all of us, right? That is solidarity here is key. None of us are free until all of us are free. That is to stand in solidarity and speak up and stand up for one another. That has to happen more. I mean, that always has to happen, but we need to see it right now. That is, if you don't think this affects you, you are wrong. You need to stand up for everyone who is, right? At the brunt of these because this is coming for you too, and because it's the right thing to do.
When I sit there and I was looking at the video and looking at all of those people, and they weren't just drag queens, they were allies as well.
Trans people.
And trans people. And when I look at the video and I think about it, people don't realize that it's just not trans women and gay gentlemen that are dressed up in drag. It affects lesbians, gays, bis, trans. It affects all of us. So that's why it's so imperative that we all stick together and make sure that all these important issues are handled and taken care of by all of us, and that we really, truly have to stick together.
I'm curious. You're a trans inclusive group, and you watch this voice. Mateo, you represent the only 501c3 women's organization in Florida. When you watch that, what are your thoughts from your particular seat and eye? What do you think?
I mean, I see, again, hope and solidarity, and that's exactly what we need. And I think the important point that all of you, or both of you, have made is this is going to affect everyone in the sense, as vague as these are, if they're just defining drag as just somebody wearing something that doesn't match their accepted gender or whatever, that presentation, that can mean butch lesbians, that can mean non-binary people, that can mean anyone who doesn't conform to a Eurocentric beauty ideal. So it really, it can harm a lot of people.
One last thought that I thought was interesting. Agreed. I had a friend call me. I went outside of the studio this afternoon when this news started coming in. I'm not sure if it was CNN or MSNBC, but they went live to the Capitol Rotunda, and they've shown pictures today. And a friend of mine called me and said, drag queens are marching on the Capitol. And it just made me smile, because at the end of the day, there was no actual possibility of change of what we've watched in this session. And that has nothing to do with why they march in heels and whatever you represent in community and our allies. It had no consequence to the results other than what is right and what is wrong.
If I could just add one more thing, because as you said, that the other point about Stonewall here that has to be kind of made, right, is that trans and gender nonconforming people have been leading the way for people's rights for decades and decades and decades. Stonewall is just one of those examples, right? That is like to see the power of this moment. Like when we see that video, we are seeing something, 60 years later, 50 years, like whether it's at the 40s or the 1920s, gender nonconforming and trans people have fought for our rights from the very beginning. They have been at the center of these movements, and that has not changed.
Yeah, and let's hope that we're watching a spark today in the Capitol of the building. And hey, hey, ho, ho, and what the next sentence was. LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.